I still remember the exact moment I found the texts. I was sitting on the couch, tired and exhausted from work when I decided to clear out some old messages on her phone. It was a stupid routine thing, something I'd done hundreds of times before. But this time my eye caught a flicker of something strange, an unopened message notification from her boss. I hesitated for a second, then swiped it open without thinking much. The words hit me like a punch in the gut. It was a flirty, intimate exchange, full of inside jokes, suggestive comments, and plans for a weekend trip. I read it again, slower this time, trying to convince myself I was just overreacting, but the evidence was clear. She was lying, hiding something. The boss's name kept popping up, always in texts, always in plans. I saw her tickets to a weekend getaway printed on our shared printer right there on the desk. The dates, exactly when I was out of town for that conference. All of it was carefully hidden, meticulously planned behind my back. My stomach twisted like I'd swallowed a handful of stones. I kept telling myself it was just work, just a harmless trip, but deep down I knew better. How could she do this? How could she betray me that way? The woman I loved, the woman I was supposed to marry in just a few weeks, was sneaking around with her boss, and she'd been doing it for weeks. I felt the blood drain from my face, my palms slick with sweat. My head was pounding. I clutched the phone, almost as if I could squeeze the truth out of it. I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew I needed a plan. I couldn't just yell and lose it. I needed something airtight, something she wouldn't see coming. I started piecing together the pieces, the texts, the tickets, the hidden messages, like a puzzle I couldn't unsee anymore. I needed to understand, how long had this been going on? How much had I missed? And most importantly, what was I going to do about it? That night I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling like I'd been hit with a sledgehammer. Every breath was shallow, my chest tight. I kept hearing her voice, her laugh. The way she'd look at me with that smile. Was it all a lie? Had she ever truly loved me? Or was I just some placeholder while she played her secret game? I knew I couldn't keep quiet, not anymore. I had to act, but I also knew this wasn't just about catching her. It was about justice, about making her pay for the pain she'd caused. I was tired of being a fool. I was tired of feeling like I was walking around with a target on my back, blind to what was really happening. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. I wasn't going to blow everything up in anger, at least not yet. I needed proof, a solid plan that would give me the upper hand. I started gathering more evidence, digging through her phone, her emails, even her social media. Every little detail mattered. I needed to know if she'd been lying about anything else, if there were more people involved, or if she'd been planning this for months. I remember the cold, heavy feeling in my stomach every time I found a new piece of her betrayal. The way her words on the screen seemed to mock me, her guilt hidden behind innocent smiles and professional politeness. I kept telling myself, this isn't just a mistake, it's a betrayal, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I sat at my desk, trembling with a mix of rage and heartbreak, and wrote down my plan. I'd confront her at the right moment with everything laid out on the table. I'd show her I knew. I'd present her with her own lies, expose her secrets, and then decide what to do. I wasn't going to be a fool anymore. I wasn't going to be a pawn in her game. I wanted her to feel what I felt: betrayal, shame, and the realization that she'd lost everything. But even as I plotted, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning, that I was playing with fire. Still, I knew there was no turning back now. The truth was out, and I was about to make sure she understood that I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. Are you ready for the next part? That night, I sat in the dim glow of my laptop, surrounded by the cold silence of the apartment. Every nerve in my body felt too tight, like a stretched wire ready to snap. I stared at the screens that held her secrets, the texts, the emails, the plans she'd tried so hard to hide. I was numb, but also filled with a kind of icy determination. I wasn't going to let this slide. I had to do something, and I had to do it right. I remembered her boss's name, Mark. He was a smooth-talking, charming guy, the kind of guy you see at work functions and forget about. But now, he was the one I was obsessing over. I needed to know everything about him to make my case solid. I started digging through his social media profiles, looking for anything that might give me an edge. What I found was a pattern, a trail of flirtatious comments and inappropriate messages. They'd been talking for months. Of course, I'd missed it. How could I not? I was busy with work, planning the wedding, believing everything was perfect. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through their exchanges. It was clear they had a connection, more than just a professional one. Flirty jokes, inside references, plans for secret weekends. I felt my stomach turn again, but I forced myself to keep going. I needed to be sure. I printed out everything, creating a dossier I could use when the time came. I knew I had to be smart about this. I couldn't just confront her blindly. I needed leverage, proof that would shut her down cold. So I set up a small bug in her phone, nothing obvious, just enough to record her conversations when she thought she was alone. I wasn't proud of it, but I wasn't about to let her walk all over me either. The last thing I wanted was to be again. The next morning I woke up early, my heart pounding with adrenaline. I had my plan ready. I would confront her face to face, but not before I had a little more ammunition. I needed her to see I was serious. I took the printed evidence, the recordings, and kept them close. My hands were sweaty as I prepared to finally lay it all out. I was in the kitchen when she came out of her room. She looked fresh, innocent, even smiling, humming a tune. I felt my jaw tighten. I turned to her and said, "We need to talk, now." Her smile faltered just a little, but she nodded, brushing past me. I remember the moment so clearly. I laid everything out on the table, the texts, the tickets, the recordings. Her face went pale. Her eyes darted around, searching for an escape route. I saw the shock and guilt wash over her like a flood. "You lied to me," I said, voice cold but steady. "You've been sneaking around with your boss, planning trips behind my back. Do you know what you've done?" She stammered, trying to deny it, but I cut her off. "Save it. I've got everything documented. Every lie, every secret. How long has this been going on?" She swallowed hard, her lips trembling. "It's not what it looks like, it's just, I was overwhelmed. I didn't mean for it to go this far." "Overwhelmed?" I scoffed. "You're telling me that a week before our wedding you're suddenly overwhelmed? Or is it just convenient timing for your little affair?" She looked down, tears pooling in her eyes. "Please, I didn't want to hurt you. It just happened." I was stupid. "No," I interrupted sharply. "You were dishonest. You lied. You betrayed everything we built. And I don't think I can forgive that." Her shoulders shook, and I could see her fighting to hold it together. I felt the knot tighten in my stomach. This wasn't just about her cheating anymore. It was about the fact that she'd played me like a fool for weeks, maybe months. She made me think I was crazy, that it was all in my head. But now the truth was in front of me, undeniable. I took a deep breath and said, "I've had enough. You need to pack your things and leave. Don't come back. I want nothing to do with this betrayal anymore." My voice was firm, but inside I felt like every part of me was breaking apart. She looked at me, eyes wide with shock. "Please wait, don't do this, we can fix it." "No," I cut her off again. "You chose this. You chose him over me, over us." I stood up, grabbing her keys and her purse. "You're no longer part of my life." As she started crying, I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with a deep, aching pain. I handed her the keys, my fingers trembling. Slightly, she looked at me like I'd just punched her. That was the moment I knew I'd done what I had to do. No more lies, no more pretending. This was the end. I watched her walk out the door, the soft click of the lock echoing in the silence afterward. Something inside me shifted, an odd mixture of anger and liberation. I felt like I had just taken control of my life for the first time in weeks. Now, I was free to figure out what came next. But one thing was clear. I wouldn't be the fool again. Not ever. The silence in the apartment after she left was deafening. I stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of what just happened settle on my chest. My hands were still trembling, partly from adrenaline, partly from the realization that I'd just severed the last ties I had to someone who betrayed me so completely. I never thought I'd be in this position, crying inside, yet somehow feeling oddly relieved. It was a strange, sick kind of freedom. I knew I had to keep my wits about me. She'd be furious, humiliated, probably try to reach out, maybe even try to manipulate her way back in. But I wasn't going to let her. I'd made my decision. No more lies, no more secrets. And I knew this wasn't just about her cheating. It was about me reclaiming my dignity. Over the next few days, I started sorting through everything I had collected, the texts, the emails, the recordings. Each piece of evidence was like a brick in my wall of truth. I felt a strange mix of clarity and rage. That's when I realized I needed to take control of the situation in a way she wouldn't expect. I had to make her see she'd lost everything. Not just me, but her reputation, her career if it came out, and maybe even her integrity. That evening, I sat at my desk, trembling with a mixture of adrenaline and cold determination. I was thinking about how to turn this into my advantage, how to make her regret ever crossing me. I decided I'd leak some of her messages to her boss, nothing overtly damaging, just enough to make her realize I knew everything. I wanted her to feel exposed, vulnerable, and powerless. I was also planning to contact her friends, to make sure she understood the damage she'd done would ripple through her entire life. The plan was simple. I'd send a carefully crafted email, anonymous, of course, detailing her betrayal but leaving enough ambiguity that it would spark gossip. I included snippets of her conversations, some carefully selected texts, and a warning that her actions would come to light. I wanted her to feel the pressure mounting, to see her carefully built facade crumble around her. I typed out the email, feeling my fists clench as I wrote. "Think you can hide behind your secrets, but I've got you now," I whispered. "The truth always comes out, and when it does, it hits hard." I pressed send, then leaned back in my chair, waiting to see what would happen. The next morning, the fallout started immediately. I had my phone in my hand when I saw her name pop up. My heart jumped into my throat. She was calling me, her name blinking on the screen, urgent and desperate. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. "What the hell did you do?" she demanded, voice trembling. "People are talking. My boss called me this morning, furious. My colleagues are asking questions." "What did you send?" I kept my tone steady, cold. "Didn't do anything she didn't deserve. You want secrets. I made sure everyone knows you're not as innocent as you pretend to be." "You're crazy," she hissed. "If you think this is going to fix anything, you're wrong. You're just making it worse." "That's what I wanted," I shot back. "You've been lying, sneaking around like some two-bit actress. Now everyone will see the real you. Maybe then you'll remember what honesty looks like." There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear her breathing heavily. Then her voice, quiet but trembling, said, "You think you've won? This isn't over. You'll regret this." I smiled bitterly. "No, I think I've finally started to take back what's mine. You threw everything away and now you're trying to claw it back. Sorry, sweetheart, you're too late." After that call, she disappeared for a couple of days. I knew she was probably furious, plotting, maybe even trying to spin her way out of it. But I didn't care. I felt like I'd finally taken control. I'd shown her I wasn't some naive fool anymore. I'd made her regret her choices, and I'd done it in a way she couldn't undo. Meanwhile, I kept my distance, trying to process everything. Sleeping was still a mess. My mind kept replaying her words, her lies, and that moment when I handed her the keys and watched her walk out. The betrayal hurt deeper than I thought possible, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I was done playing nice. I had to start thinking of myself first. And here's the thing. I knew I wasn't the only one she'd lied to. I decided I'd reach out to some of her close friends, people I trusted, and let them know what she'd been up to. I wanted her to face the fallout in every corner of her life. That's when I realized that I had the power now, not just to hurt her, but to make sure she understood that her actions had consequences. I sat back, exhausted but victorious in some twisted way, and I wondered how much more damage I could do if I pushed harder. The game was only just beginning. "Do you want me to keep going?" A few days after I sent out that anonymous email, the chaos started to spread. I stayed quiet, watching everything unfold like a predator watching its prey. The first sign was her silence. No more calls, no texts. Then her social media accounts started getting flooded with questions and accusations from mutual friends and colleagues she tried to keep in the dark. I could see the panic in her eyes from the snippets I'd gathered. She was unraveling fast. One evening, I received a message from a friend I'd trusted. "She's freaking out," it said. "People are talking and she's trying to deny everything but the evidence. She can't spin her way out of this." I smiled bitterly. That's exactly what I wanted. I had planted the seeds and now I was watching her drown. But I wasn't satisfied yet. I needed her to feel the full weight of her betrayal. I decided to take things further, more deliberate, more calculated. I wanted her to see that I wasn't going to let her get away with it that easily. I knew she'd try to come back, maybe beg or plead, but I wasn't interested in any pity party. I wanted her to understand that. Her lies had destroyed what we had. So I devised a plan to make her regret ever crossing me. I contacted her boss, Mark. I knew I shouldn't have done it, but I wanted to see how far I could push. I sent him a message, just a simple, polite note, nothing overt, just enough to remind him that I knew everything. I told him I was aware of his involvement, that I had evidence, and that I'd be willing to share it if things didn't change. The next morning, I got a call from Mark himself. "Look," he said, voice tense. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but this isn't going to end well for anyone. She's denying everything, but I know she's lying. Be careful what you do next." I chuckled darkly. "Careful? No, I don't think so. I'm just making sure she understands that the game over." I could hear the tension in his voice, the frustration. Good. We were both in agreement. This was war now. Over the next few days, I made sure the pressure kept mounting. I leaked more snippets, more evidence to her friends and colleagues. Every time she tried to spin her story, it fell apart faster. The more uneven she looked. I could see her cracking, her confidence eroding with each new revelation. Meanwhile, I kept my distance, letting her stew in her own chaos. I avoided her calls and messages, wanting her to feel isolated, cornered. I wanted her to realize that her lies had become her prison. Every time I saw her name pop up on my phone, I hesitated. Part of me wanted to call her and demand answers, but I knew better. She wasn't worth the effort anymore. One afternoon, I caught her trying to reach me through a mutual friend. Her voice was desperate, pleading, "Please, just talk to me. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I made a mistake and I want to fix it." Her words sounded hollow, like a broken record. I felt my jaw tighten. I knew she was playing her last cards, trying to manipulate her way back into my life. I responded coldly, "You lied, you cheated, and you betrayed me. I don't want to hear your apologies. You've done enough damage. Stay away from me." I hung up before she could reply, feeling a strange mix of relief and disgust. By now, everyone around her knew the truth. Her reputation was crumbling faster than she could rebuild it. It felt good, really good, to see her finally exposed, to see her lose control. I'd made her feel what I'd felt all along, powerless, humiliated, and alone. Deep down, I wondered how much more she could take before she broke completely. I'd pushed her into a corner and I had no plans to stop. Not until I was sure she understood that actions have consequences and that I was done being the fool. That night, I sat in my apartment reflecting. I knew I'd done what I set out to do, but I also felt the ache of betrayal deep inside. I'd lost someone I thought I knew, but gained clarity about who I was. Her departure had left a void, yes, but also a strange sense of liberation. Tomorrow, I'd take the next step, the one I'd been planning all along. I just needed to find the right moment, when she'd hit her lowest, when she'd truly understand that she'd burned her bridges with me for good. Are you ready for the next part? The moment I decided to go through with it, I knew it was going to be both satisfying and final. I'd watched her unravel, seen her panic attacks, heard her desperate pleas, and I'd let her think I might finally forgive her. That's what made this so sweet. The last piece of my plan was to make sure she felt completely crushed, to see her realize that her betrayal wasn't just some fleeting mistake, but a permanent scar she'd have to live with. One evening, I waited in my apartment, a cold beer in hand, feeling the anticipation creep up my spine. The time had come to deliver the ultimate message. No more games, no more hiding. I'd made sure she knew I was on to her, but now I wanted her to see that I was serious about ending this once and for all. I was going to hand her the final blow, and I wanted it to be one she'd never forget. I grabbed a small envelope and slipped inside a simple set of keys, the ones to her apartment. I also included a little handwritten note. "You lost everything, don't try to come back." I did. Want to leave her guessing. I wanted her to know that I'd cut her out of my life entirely. I placed the envelope on her doorstep, careful to avoid being seen, and then I stepped back into the shadows. Next, I called her. Her voice was shaky when she picked up. "What's this?" she asked, voice trembling. "Just a reminder," I said calmly. "You're done, no more lies, no more games. You made your choice and I made mine. The keys are on your doorstep. Goodbye." Silence on the other end. Then a faint sniffle. I hung up, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and emptiness. Watching her scramble to pick up the keys, knowing I'd finally sealed the deal, that was the sweetest victory I'd had in a long time. The following days, I kept my distance entirely. No texts, no calls, nothing. I wanted her to stew in the aftermath of her fall. I often caught myself staring at her social media pages, watching her try to piece her life back together, her face etched with worry and regret. I could see her trying to spin her story, pretending everything was fine, but the cracks were obvious. I also took one final step, filing the formal papers to end our relationship completely. I went to the lawyer, signed everything, and sent the papers to her in a sealed envelope. I didn't want any more mess, just a clean cut. I wanted her to know I was serious about moving on. That day, I watched her open the envelope, her eyes scanning the documents, her face draining of color as she realized it was over. No more excuses, no more lies. I saw her sit down heavily, clutching her chest as if the weight of her betrayal finally caught up with her. That was the moment I knew I'd won, not just in the legal sense but emotionally too. I'd taken back my power. I felt the old pain still lingering, but it was muffled now. I'd been betrayed, yes, but I'd also learned something about myself, that I was stronger than I thought. She made her choice and I'd made mine. I'd cut the cord and moved on, leaving her to pick up her shattered life. Looking back, I realized that sometimes the only way to heal is to take control, to cut out the poison, face the truth, and walk away with your dignity intact. I needed that final step to make her see that I was done, and when she closed that chapter, I knew I could finally start to heal. Are you ready for the final installment? In the days that followed, I felt a strange calm settling over me. It wasn't relief exactly, but a sense of finality. I'd taken everything she threw at me, her lies, her betrayal, her manipulations, and turned it into my own victory. It was brutal, yes, but necessary. I had to reclaim my life from the wreckage she left behind. I spent a lot of time reflecting on the whole mess. Honestly, I didn't expect to come out of it feeling stronger, but I did. The betrayal was a blow, but it also opened my eyes. I realized I'd been blind, not just to her lies, but to the signs I'd ignored. Those small, nagging red flags I brushed aside. The little things that should tip me off but didn't. I'd been so caught up in the idea of us, in the comfort of our plans, that I missed the warnings. I learned a lesson that I think every person should remember. Trust, but verify. Love is important, but so is self-respect. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. Don't wait until it's too late to see the cracks. I also learned that revenge, when done right, isn't about gloating or hurting someone just to hurt. It's about reclaiming your dignity and making sure they understand that their actions have consequences. Right now, I'm in a better place. I've filed for divorce, handed over all the documents, and officially closed that chapter of my life. It's strange, like I've been detoxing from a toxic relationship. It took guts to do what I did, and honestly, I don't regret it. I feel lighter, freer, and more in control. Looking back, I want to tell anyone who might be in a similar situation, don't ignore the signs. When someone betrays your trust, it's not just about them cheating. It's about the respect you owe yourself. Don't let their lies define you. Take action, no matter how painful it is. Because in the end, you're the one who has to live with the choices you make. I also want to say that revenge isn't about petty retaliation. It's about justice, protecting your own peace, your reputation, and your self-worth. When I handed her the keys, I wasn't just ending a relationship. I was ending the chapter of lies and deceit. I made sure she felt the loss of what she had destroyed. Now I'm focusing on rebuilding, on healing. I've started seeing a therapist, talking to friends, and rediscovering who I am outside of that relationship. It's a long road, but I know I'm on the right track. To anyone out there stuck in a web of lies, I'll leave you with this: trust yourself. Trust your instincts. And if someone betrays you, really betrays you, don't be afraid to take back your power. It might hurt like hell at first, but it's the only way to truly move on. The pain of betrayal fades, but the lessons stay with you. And one day, you'll look back and realize that the strength you found in that pain is what finally set you free.